Okay, I just watched Funky Dineva's. Let me read it. It's Black people have a problem with violence in Atlanta and Miami Beach. And I could have just, like, I'm probably still going to go in the comments because I doubt he'll ever see this, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out um, because it's conversations like this or commentary like this that feeds a narrative that I feel like we have to kill in America. That there is some solution, that there is a problem and there is a solution, um, that there is a violence problem amongst Black people in Atlanta and North Miami, that there is a problem with the violence amongst Black people, that there is a problem of violence in these specific areas without um, elaborating on how specific those areas are, A, for Black culture, period, but also how specific those areas are when it comes to um, the type of people it attracts, um, the menagerie of people it attracts, and the things that you're overlooking looking at shootouts at the mall or shootouts in restaurants or gun violence or things like that. First of all, we all know that this country has a love affair with guns, that gun violence is um, ever encroaching closer and closer, like kudzu, on enjoying life in this country. The only time that there have been no school shootings in this country has been during the pandemic because there was no school. And I think that specifically when you look at a city like North Miami or Miami Beach and you're saying why these people got to come fuck up the damn thing, why they got to fuck up these nice people things, that's why we can't have nice things. I think you're mis appropriating your anger and further scapegoating Black people for being what this country has always been. I was just watching a crime movie the other night, and I love gangster movies. Um, Public Enemies about John Dillinger, and it there was a time where outlaws, bank robbers, robbers were just like a class of people. They had their own geography, they had their own way of doing things, their own culture, their own way of speaking. And basically, they were just the outcasts of society, like people who probably would have been wards of the state. Um, but there was no structures then at all. There was no child protective services. There was no foster care system, nothing. And at that time, bank robberies were common. Crime was just common. Things were blowing up all the time. And, prohibition, the founding of the FBI, all these things came in to play because there just seemed to be in this capitalist society a faction of society that figured out that it was easier to steal than to work. And there are always going to be those people in this capitalist society. There is always going to be that issue in tourist destinations. It's those two things intersect in this culture, in this country. When you take a town like Miami, that has always been the crossroads of drug trafficking, sex trafficking, um, dirty dealers, international crime, and you plop in the middle of it, upper middle class tourists who are just coming there to like get the balmy weather and, party with basketball players. Like, it's not really rocket science. And like, what really got me in the statement was where Funky Dineva goes down this tangent of, this is a tourist city and we're trying to create a tourist city. But what's completely silly about that is that You know, I went to Miami in the 90s. I never wanted to go back. I watched the Miami Mega Jail documentary. That pretty much summed it up for me. George Zimmerman sums up Florida for me. You know, there is a culture in Florida as a state of just gun loving, um, cocaine snorting, um, wild party life that's been going on for a long time, and that's not going to disappear just because you throw up a couple of Quiznos and a boutique hotel. That's just not going to change anything. So to pretend like because now you live in Miami Beach and that it's because it's becoming this like place to launder money by constructing these apartment buildings and condos that nobody's fucking living in, but people are just trading like monopoly money, that all of a sudden it's just this like it's supposed to be this nice place where cultural activities happen like art basel and like no crime happens then. Child, when do you think all the sex trafficking is happening? Why do you think why do you think Epstein was down the street from it? Like, what do you think is really going on? It's really baffling to me that people can be this naive and live in such um high power, high money places where there is porn being shot like on a regular basis, and you know sex trafficking rings being brought up on charges on a normal basis. Like, what are y'all doing? And I think this is the problem, that in the South, there's a quiet as it's kept philosophy, and let those people be who they're going to be over there. And like Funky Dineva said, I don't understand street people, but yet confesses to having had been a person who was once a drug addict and going to bars, a person who went to FAMU, who like intersected with all types of people, and yet somehow there's still this otherness to the underclass of poor, um, gun-toting street thugs in the South. I think that's one reason why Northerners and Southerners don't get along, because in the North we kind of um, adapt to the fact that we got aunties in the projects with our crazy cousins. Some of our grandparents are in the projects, and they were never defined by the projects, and they live in the squalor and the violence, but they're respected in their communities and nobody really messes with them. And at the same time, our uncles and some of our mothers and fathers have nicer homes in the suburbs. At the same time, I live in Maryland in PG County, where, in all these nice black suburbs there's no Phipps Plaza, there's no Bal Harbor, there's no Gucci stores, there's very few like upscale restaurants and entertainment districts. It's always been quizzical to me, but that's because we're not a tourist destination. This is where, I live in the bureaucracy capital, like, where people work for 40 years for the EPA, or for people who, you know, um, are the people who make sure that government services are done and have been done. You know, I've gone to funerals where presidents have come because they were staffers at the White House Postal Service, or they were Capitol Hill police who got killed during you know uh, terrorist attacks. And this is these are places where there, in a lot of black middle class communities, there's just not that intersection. But North Miami, or Miami Beach, and Atlanta are two places specifically where, and I would say Los Angeles and Houston, are places where there are huge black communities, where there's also a lot of power, a lot of money, and a lot of things going on behind closed doors. And yet, and still, the street violence that captures people's attention in the headlines are the things that let you know that there's something going on. There's shit going on. It is crazy town. Like, those condos behind those gates in those wealthy neighborhoods, there is crazy shit going on. There is lots more violence, and it's in the air. It's almost like a contagion. And by the time it gets to street level, you're looking at it like, why can't we have nice things? And it's just like, I mean, the things that prop up those nice things is money laundering, cocaine money, hustlers, international players. That shit is there because of the hookers, the dope fiends, and the guns. Those guns being sold is what's putting money in those streets. So it's what you're seeing is the market. You're seeing advertising. So I'm sorry to tell you, but like if you do not know, Miami Beach is 2 years off of being like what I don't even I had no clue that people were like moving to Palm Beach and Miami Beach as like a place to live. Like I had no clue. I it's not a viable place to live for me because I come from a very stable place with a stable economy, not based on tourism, partially based on tourism. So I just don't feel all the surprise and the shock, the scapegoating, the blaming it on black people, the saying that our violence is tantamount or paramount is really silly. Like Panama City, Daytona Beach, Myrtle Beach, San Padre Island, uh, Palm Springs, California, those cities banned those white kids from coming down there and wreaking havoc on them. Look at white college towns. They riot when their teams win. Like it's 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 craziness to say that there's a um inequity in the violence in the black communities and that we encroach upon the nicer things that we shouldn't. It's just bullshit. Sorry.